Oh, yes.
Initiative and referendum?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I did. One of the things that the Constitution requires is that when a new state comes in, it must guarantee to its citizens a Republican form of government. And from time to time, people question, Oregon has both initiative and referendum. And some people have questioned whether or not initiative and referendum, especially the initiative, violates this clause of the Constitution. Because they view the initiative as being not a Republican form of government, but a democratic form of government. In other words, mob rule. Okay? And so there have been discussions about this, and I don't know, when Oregon came into the nation, I don't know if there was a big discussion over the fact that this was in the Oregon Constitution or not.
Well, initiative in Oregon came along in 1911.
Oh, so it was after it became a state.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so they actually were already in, and do you know if anybody ever challenged it in court?
I believe it was challenged and upheld.
Okay. But so, I don't know, what do you guys think? Do you think initiative is something, we like it when it turns out the way we want. We don't like it when it turns out the way we don't want, right? Do you think overall it's something that comports well with the Republican form of government? John?
Well, I think you said 1849 or 1859 that happened, got in the Constitution for Oregon.
No, I said it was 1911, I think is what Herb said. Of course, Oregon became a state when, in
1859.
59, because remember the centennial. Well, I'm thinking, during that time, coming up to the Civil War, the worldview that really supported the Republican idea of government had begun to fade already. Even the Senate and the Congress was thinking more along the line that the majority provided the ethical base of law instead of the old rule of law or God's law that you had 50 years earlier.
Yeah.
Is that what an initiative means? Kind of just majority
initiative
rules?
Yeah, there's two. No, yeah, the initiative is where we can, the people, right, can come up with an idea that they want to make into a law, and it goes before all the people, and the people can vote on it, and if the people pass it, then it gets passed.
As opposed to just the Congress or whatever saying.
And then the referendum is where the state legislature will pass something, but then they'll refer it to the voters, and usually they do that when they really don't want to take a stand. So they'll come up with the law, they'll present it to the voters. Good example of this recently, which impacted me personally, was when they changed the business tax laws. For the last 2 years, I've not made any money, but my taxes went from $10 a year when I didn't make any money to $150 when I didn't make any money.
Thanks that year.
Okay. So, it's a simple example of something the legislature wanted to increase taxes, and of course, all us rich business people were the ones that were going to pay, not the individual taxpayer. So, it's the kind of thing which a mob, if you will, can be directed or encouraged to do.
Yeah, the noticeable, the initiative stuff, Measure 36, protecting marriage, that was an initiative that was, kind of came from our side of the table. Other things, property tax limitations were done by initiative as well. And the referendum, the most notable examples Doug alluded to was Measure 66 and 67 that we voted on a little over a year ago. So those are how those things tee up. So the whole idea about initiative is the government's not doing what it's supposed to, so the people need to take matters into their own hands, which is why it's extremely unpopular with government officials.
Yes. Right.
And if you pay attention to what the Oregon Secretary of State has said over time, it's how, because their initiatives are so prolific, it's taking a lot of time and energy and resources, and frankly, it's kind of driving us nuts. So let's figure out ways to make sure that we keep that under control, under tighter control. So there's been more and more regulation on how the initiative process plays out, because it's not generally favored by those in authority.
So let me ask you, what do you think about initiative?
Honestly, honestly, I don't know what the issue would or could be of it conflicting with a, quote, Republican form of government. My gut reaction is simply, I think it makes sense to me because it's the most basic grassroots form of government that we can engage in. I mean, I increasingly in my life have felt more and more cut out of the process. And like what Herb, I'm glad he mentioned that thing about the it hasn't just been one, it's been the last several secretaries of state.
Oh, sure.
Who have done everything in their power to crush the initiative process. Like one of the most egregious ones is the, if there's one bogus signature, they subtract 400 signatures off the list of people who signed because they assume that, well, there was one bad one, so we think there must be 400 more. And they just arbitrarily came up with this. So when you have statists on one side trying to crush the process, that says to me there must be something good about it.
Well, I'm going to take the other side. And I'm going to rely on James Madison to help me out here. Okay? Yeah.
I just went through this process with a petition. We had to get certain signatures and all the rules and stuff on these signatures, a certain percentage of the voters to get it on the ballot.
Yeah.
And we were coming against the mayor, we came against the city council in doing this because they would lose power in the process of forcing the issue to a vote, you know. And the end result, we just had a small group. We did pay a lawyer to make sure that the charter amendment was all legal and proper, but we were coming against lots of money, established businesses, economics, and all that. And we use website, we use email, we use Facebook, Twitter, everything we could get our hands on along with face-to-face, and we won, you know. And so I was very excited to see that a citizen process would force something like that here, you know. And we had 40% more signatures on our petition than we needed, you know. And they were fighting us all the way, but it was really interesting to see.
So let's see what Madison had to say. He says, we may define a republic to be, or at least may bestow that name on, a government which derives all its powers directly or indirectly from, some typos, from the great body of the people. And
They were in the original.
Yeah. By persons holding their offices during pleasure for a limited period or during good behavior. It is essential that it be derived from the great body of society, not from an inconsiderable proportion or a favored class of it. So that's what's essential about it. It is sufficient for such a government that the persons administering it be appointed either directly or indirectly by the people, and that they hold their appointments by either the tenures just specified. So basically what Madison is saying here is that we don't, because one of the things he was responding to here in Federalist 39 was that there were many countries around the world that called themselves republics. And so he wants to clarify, because there were republics in Europe that whereby, or if you think about, for example, sometimes you think about the Roman Republic, for example, all right? Before Caesar Augustus, Rome was a republic, so-called. But in terms of the people who were represented, it was really only the wealthy and the landholders that were ultimately represented. And so one of the things that Madison is pointing out is that you want a greater majority of the people themselves to be, in fact, represented, and they don't vote directly, but they are, in fact, represented by people. And the big concern they had was, again, they understood mob psychology, which, unfortunately, our opponents understand better than we do. Okay? And if you don't understand that, all you have to do is look at the effectiveness of the homosexual lobby.